A humble boy walks into a bank alone, holding only a yellowed piece of paper and the hope left by his late mother. Humiliated in front of everyone, he discovers that the account she left behind holds more than money. It holds love, sacrifice, and courage. And when he faces greed and injustice, he proves that a true legacy isn't measured in numbers, but in acts of honor. Before we begin this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button on the video, which is very important to us, and let us know in the comments what city you're watching this story from. The morning London sun filtered through the enormous glass windows of the Central Bank of England on the bustling Oxford Street. The intense flow of executives, retirees, and shopkeepers created that typical urban symphony of London, where each person carried their own stories, dreams, and worries. Among that entire crowd, a small figure stood out for his simplicity and the nervousness that showed in every step. Gabriel Smith Rogers was only 10 years old, but he carried on his shoulders a responsibility that many adults would never know. His worn-out trainers touched the marble floor with an almost reverent hesitation, as if each step took him into an unknown and frightening territory. The boy held with both hands a piece of paper, yellowed with time, folded and refolded so many times that the creases looked like scars from a story yet untold. The boy's simple clothes contrasted sharply with the sophisticated environment of the bank. His faded blue t-shirt and jeans, with discreet patches, revealed a childhood marked by simplicity, but not by poverty. There was something dignified in Gabriel's posture, a silent determination that shone in his brown eyes, the same eyes he had inherited from his mother. Marina Smith Rogers had always been a woman of few words but many actions. She had worked as a cleaner in 3 different offices, waking up at 5 in the morning to ensure the coffee was ready when Gabriel and his younger brother, Luke, who was only 7, woke up for school. She never complained about the exhaustive routine, nor the calloused hands, nor the aching back at the end of the day. For Marina, every penny earned represented another brick in building her son's future. What Gabriel didn't know until a few days ago was that his mother kept a secret she had carried in silence her entire life, protecting it with the same dedication she protected her own children. Before departing for her eternal rest, a victim of pneumonia that worsened rapidly, Marina had left a small shoebox hidden under her bed. Inside it only 3 items: a photo of the boys as babies, a worn set of work documents, and a yellowed paper with numbers and information that at first glance seemed to make no sense. It was Mrs. Eleanor, the elderly neighbor who had been looking after the boys since Marina's passing, who found the box while organizing the house's belongings. The woman with grey hair and a welcoming smile had always been like a second mother to Gabriel and Luke. Her eyes filled with tears when she realized what that paper represented. Bank account numbers, sort code, and a series of codes that could only mean one thing. For 3 consecutive nights, Gabriel couldn't sleep properly. The paper was kept under his pillow, and the boy spent hours imagining what he might find at that bank. Mrs. Eleanor, despite her fragile health and a heart that was already showing signs of fatigue, encouraged the boy to find out what his mother had left for him. After all, Marina would never do anything without a very clear purpose. On that Tuesday morning, Gabriel woke up with a different determination. He kissed Luke's forehead, who was still fast asleep, hugged Mrs. Eleanor tightly, and took the bus towards the city centre. Throughout the journey, his hands never let go of the yellowed paper, as if it were a protective talisman connecting him directly to his mother's love. Now, standing in the bank's lobby, Gabriel felt his heart beat so hard he was sure everyone there could hear it. The environment was intimidating for a child his age. Well-dressed people walked back and forth, talking on the phone about investments, applications, and numbers he barely understood. The noise of the machines, the clinking of coins, and the murmur of conversations created an almost suffocating atmosphere. The boy approached the information desk, where a blonde employee about 30 years old was typing rapidly on her computer. She wore a name badge that read Julianne Sanders and had a natural smile that immediately put Gabriel at ease. When she looked up and saw the boy standing there with that expression between determined and frightened, her heart ached in an inexplicable way. "Hi, sweetie. How can I help you?" Julianne asked, leaning slightly to be at the boy's eye level. Gabriel swallowed hard and, with a still trembling voice, replied, "I need to talk to someone about a bank account. It was my mum's." Julianne immediately noticed the past tense the boy used. It was his mum's, not it is his mum's. That small linguistic difference carried an emotional weight that the employee instantly grasped. She looked around and saw that it was busy, but something about this situation made her stop everything she was doing. "Do you have any account documents?" she asked, extending her hand in a welcoming way. Gabriel carefully unfolded the yellowed paper as if it were a treasure map. The numbers, written by hand in Marina's neat calligraphy, revealed information that seemed to have been organized with great care and precision. Julianne analyzed the data and confirmed that it was an account with that bank, but she realized that a manager's authorization would be needed to access more detailed information. "Gabriel, I need you to talk to our regional director. He'll be able to help you better, okay?" said Julianne, writing the boy's name on a piece of paper. "Can you wait here for me for a minute?" The boy nodded, holding his yellowed paper firmly. Julianne walked to the glass-walled office at the back of the bank, where Robert Miller, the regional director, was reviewing financial reports. Robert was a 45-year-old man, bald, with a well-trimmed mustache and an air of superiority he had cultivated since taking the position. He always wore expensive suits and imported watches, as if he wanted to make his position in the banking hierarchy clear to everyone. "Director Miller, there's a boy here who needs to check information on an account. It seems to be something delicate," Julianne explained, trying to convey the seriousness of the situation. Robert looked up from the papers with an annoyed expression. "A boy? Julianne, can't you see I'm busy with the monthly reports? Tell him to come back with a guardian." "Sir, I think it's important. He has documentation, and from his appearance it looks like it could be a complicated family situation." Robert sighed dramatically, as if it were a great inconvenience to leave his office to attend to a child. He stood up from his chair, adjusted his tie and walked to the lobby with heavy steps, like someone going to solve a minor problem as quickly as possible. When he saw Gabriel standing next to Julianne's desk, Robert couldn't hide a sarcastic smile. The social difference between him and the boy was glaring, and this awakened in him a sense of superiority that he made no effort to disguise. "So, kiddo, you want to check the balance of an account?" Robert asked, in a tone loud enough to draw the attention of other people in the lobby. "Let me guess. You gathered the coins from your piggy bank and want to know how much it is?" Some people around began to pay attention to the conversation. A grey-haired gentleman smiled discreetly. A female executive stopped scrolling on her phone to watch the scene, and even other employees started to approach. For Robert, this was becoming morning entertainment. Gabriel felt his face flush, but he kept his voice firm. "No, sir, it's an account my mum left for me." "Your mum left it?" Robert laughed, making sure everyone heard. "And where is your mum now, boy? Gone shopping at Harrods and sent you to look after her money?" Gabriel's silence was more eloquent than any answer. The boy just held the yellowed paper tighter, while his eyes filled with tears that he refused to let fall. Julianne immediately sensed the awkwardness of the situation and stepped closer. "Director, I think we should check the details he brought," she suggested, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Check what, Julianne? Just look at this kid. I bet there isn't even £10 in this account," Robert continued, now completely absorbed in the performance he was giving to his impromptu audience. "But fine, I'll log into the system just to prove you're all wasting my time." Robert walked to Julianne's computer with theatrical steps, like an actor about to perform the grand finale of his show. He typed in the details Gabriel provided, expecting to find a non-existent account, or one with a negligible balance that would confirm his suspicions and justify all the humiliation he had inflicted on the boy. The first result that appeared on the screen made him frown. The account existed and was active. Robert checked the numbers again, thinking he had typed something wrong, but the information was confirmed. When his eyes moved to the available balance field, his expression changed completely. £820,342.15. Robert blinked several times, as if his eyes were playing a trick on him. He checked the account holder's name again. Gabriel Smith Rogers. Date of birth, March 15th, 2014. The account had been opened when the boy was born, and since then it had received monthly deposits always for the same amount, £250. The director stepped back slightly from the computer, trying to process this information. The sarcastic smile had completely vanished from his face, replaced by an expression of disbelief and then of concern. How could a boy of such simple appearance be the holder of an account with over £800,000? "Well, Director," asked Julianne, noticing the radical change in her boss's demeanor, "does the account exist?" Robert tried to play it cool, quickly, closing the computer screen. "Yes, it does, but this is a private matter. I need to speak with the boy in private." "No, sir," a female voice interrupted from the back of the lobby. "If the account exists and has a significant value, this should be handled transparently, especially when dealing with a child." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. A woman of about 40 was walking towards the group. She wore a well-tailored navy blue suit, carried a leather briefcase, and had the bearing of someone accustomed to dealing with complex situations. Her brown hair was tied in an elegant bun, and her green eyes conveyed a determination that immediately intimidated Robert. "Excuse me, but who are you?" the director asked, trying to regain his authority. "Patricia Allen, a lawyer specializing in family law. I was waiting to be served when I witnessed this situation," she replied, handing Robert a business card. "And from what I've observed, a child is being publicly humiliated over matters concerning his legal rights." Gabriel looked at the woman with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Throughout his life, few adults had shown a genuine interest in protecting him. Most saw him as just another vulnerable child, destined to follow the same path of hardship that so many others face on the outskirts of London. Patricia knelt to be at the boy's eye level. "Gabriel, your name is Gabriel, isn't it?" he confirmed with a nod. "I want you to know that you don't have to face this situation alone. There are laws that protect children in cases like yours." "Cases like mine?" Gabriel asked, his voice small but curious. "Cases of inheritance, family assets, protection of property left by parents," Patricia explained, casting a meaningful glance at Robert. "And especially cases where minors need to have their rights respected without public embarrassment." Robert realized the situation was spiraling out of his control. The presence of a lawyer turned his morning entertainment into a potential legal problem. He tried to regain his composure, but his voice betrayed the nervousness that was starting to take over. "Ma'am, I was just following standard bank procedures. We need to be cautious with accounts involving minors," he said, trying to sound professional. "Is publicly humiliating a child standard procedure?" Patricia retorted, without losing her calm, but with a firmness that made Robert swallow hard. Julianne, who had been following the entire conversation, felt she needed to intervene. She looked at Gabriel, then at Patricia, and finally at her boss. Something inside her rebelled against the injustice she was witnessing, and she made a decision that would completely change the course of that morning. "Director Miller, I think we should inform Gabriel of his account balance. He has the right to know," Julianne said, surprising herself with her own courage. "Julianne, this is none of your business," Robert replied in a warning tone. "Actually, it is. It's part of my job to serve clients with transparency and respect, regardless of their age," the employee retorted, feeling the silent support of the lawyer. Gabriel remained silent, holding his yellowed paper like a protective shield. He could feel the tension in the air, but he could also sense that, for the first time since entering that bank, there were people willing to defend him. The memory of his mother seemed to be there, whispering in his ear that he was stronger than he imagined. Patricia addressed Robert directly. "Director, I suggest you perform your duty and provide the information requested by the client. Otherwise, I can file a complaint with the Central Bank for mistreatment of a minor and failure to comply with customer service protocols." The lawyer's ultimatum echoed through the lobby like thunder. Robert realized he had no way out of this situation without causing an even bigger scandal. With trembling fingers, he returned to Julianne's computer and accessed Gabriel's account again. "The current balance of the account is—" Robert paused dramatically, as if gathering the courage to say the words, £820,342.15. The bank lobby fell into absolute silence. Some people who had been following the situation from the beginning exchanged looks of disbelief. A gentleman in the queue murmured an almost inaudible, "My goodness." Julianne covered her mouth with her hand, stunned by the amount she had just heard. Gabriel remained motionless for a few seconds, processing the information. Over £800,000. His mother, who had worked 3 shifts a day, who saved pennies, who bought only the essentials, had managed to accumulate a sum he had never imagined possible. The tears he had held back during the entire humiliation now flowed freely down his face. They were not tears of sadness, but of a complex emotion that mixed gratitude, longing, and a deep love for a woman who had passed away without ever revealing the extent of her sacrifice and dedication. Patricia approached the boy and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Gabriel, your mother loved you very much, and she wanted to make sure that you and your brother would be protected, no matter what happened." The boy looked up at the lawyer, and at that moment, a special connection was formed between them. Patricia saw in Gabriel not just a child who needed legal protection, but a living example of resilience and dignity. The boy saw in the lawyer not just a competent professional, but someone who genuinely cared about his well-being. Robert, still trying to recover from the shock, realized he needed to take some action to minimize the damage to his reputation and that of the bank. "Well, now that we've confirmed the information, we need to follow the legal procedures for releasing funds to minors. This could take a few days." "A few days?" Patricia interrupted. "Director, there is an emergency procedure for cases involving vulnerable minors. I can request a court order today." Gabriel looked around and realized that this morning had changed his life in a way he couldn't yet fully comprehend. The yellowed paper in his hands was not just a document with numbers. It was the materialization of his mother's unconditional love, proof that she had thought of every detail of her children's future, even in the most difficult times. Julianne approached the group and addressed Gabriel. "Sweetie, do you have any other siblings? Is someone looking after you?" "I have my brother Luke. He's 7. Mrs. Eleanor, our neighbor, has been taking care of us since—" Gabriel couldn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. Patricia noted this information in a notepad. "Gabriel, I'm going to help you sort all of this out the right way. Your mother built this estate thinking about your future, and I'm going to ensure that future is exactly as she dreamed it." Robert, realizing he had completely lost control of the situation, tried to retreat discreetly to his office, but Patricia intercepted him. "Director, we need a copy of the entire statement for this account, from the day it was opened. And I want that provided now," she said in a tone that brooked no argument. As Robert reluctantly went to the computer to generate the requested documents, Gabriel felt that something much bigger was happening here. It wasn't just about money. It was about justice, respect, and the certainty that his mother had been a much wiser and braver woman than he had ever imagined. The London sun continued to shine through the bank's windows, but for Gabriel, that morning represented the beginning of a new phase of his life. A phase where he would no longer be alone, where there would be people willing to fight by his side, and where the memory of his mother would prove to be even more precious than any amount of money. 3 days had passed since the revelation at the bank, and Gabriel still felt as if he were living in a dream. The news of the inheritance had spread quickly through the community where he lived, on a modest estate in Stratford, on the outskirts of East London. Mrs. Eleanor had only told a few close neighbours, but in a community where everyone knows each other, secrets have a life of their own and travel through the narrow streets like wind between the houses. The house where Gabriel and Luke lived with their neighbour was simple but cosy. 2 small bedrooms, a living room that also served as a kitchen, and a small garden where Mrs. Eleanor grew her medicinal herbs. The peeling walls and the roof that leaked in a few spots told the story of a life without luxuries, but rich in affection and solidarity. That Thursday morning, Gabriel was helping Mrs. Eleanor hang clothes on the line when he heard the gate creak. It was a different sound than usual, more cautious, as if someone were hesitating before entering. The boy turned and saw a man of about 50, tall, thin, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and faded jeans. His hair was dark with graying temples, and he carried a well-worn leather briefcase. "Good morning," the man said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm looking for Gabriel Smith Rogers. Mrs. Eleanor immediately positioned herself between the stranger and the children with the protective instinct she had developed over her 72 years of life. She knew that after the discovery of the inheritance, Gabriel could become a target for ill-intentioned people. "Who's asking?" she inquired, wiping her hands on the floral apron she always wore for chores. "My name is Charles Meadows," the man replied, pulling a document from his pocket. "I'm the brother of Gabriel's late father. I came as soon as I heard about the children's situation." Gabriel frowned. His mother had never mentioned any uncle, and he knew practically everything about the family. Marina had always been very transparent about her humble origins and about the absence of the boy's father, who had disappeared from their lives when Gabriel was still very young. "My mum never talked about you," the boy said, moving closer to Mrs. Eleanor. Charles laughed in a way that tried to sound casual, but came across as forced. "Well, your father and I had been estranged for many years. A family feud, you know how it is. But now, knowing that you're alone, I felt it was my duty to show up and offer help." Mrs. Eleanor noticed something strange in the man's behavior. Throughout her life, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to identify people with bad intentions. It was a skill that had protected her family and neighbors on numerous occasions. "What kind of help?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Well, I heard that Gabriel inherited a considerable amount of money from his mother," Charles said, feigning embarrassment. "A child can't manage that kind of estate on his own. He needs a legal guardian, someone from the family." Gabriel felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something in the way the man talked about the money that deeply bothered him. It was as if Charles already knew exactly how much was in the account, as if he had detailed information about something that should be confidential. "And how did you know about the money?" Gabriel asked, with a maturity that surprised Charles himself. The man hesitated for a fraction of a second, but quickly recovered. "News travels, my boy, especially in a community like this. The important thing is that now you have someone from the family to take care of everything." Mrs. Eleanor remembered the advice Patricia Allen had given her during their phone conversation the previous night. The lawyer had been very clear. Anyone who showed up claiming kinship should be treated with extreme caution, especially if they showed specific interest in the inheritance. "Mr. Meadows, Gabriel is already being advised by a specialized lawyer," Mrs. Eleanor informed him. "All legal matters are being handled correctly." Charles's expression changed slightly. The forced smile gave way to a seriousness that revealed his true personality. "A lawyer? What lawyer? A child doesn't need a lawyer, he needs family." "Ms. Patricia Allen," Gabriel replied, feeling more secure mentioning the name of the woman who had become his ally. "She's going to make sure everything is done right." Charles mentally noted the lawyer's name. He needed to find out more about this woman and how she had become involved in the situation. His plans depended on gaining legal access to the children and, consequently, to the inheritance money. "Look, I understand your concern," he said, changing his strategy and adopting a softer tone. "But I am these children's blood uncle. I have legal rights that a stranger doesn't. I can offer stability, a better home, a quality education." Luke, who until then had remained quiet, playing with a wooden car Gabriel had made for him, looked up and said with the typical innocence of a 7-year-old, "But we like living with Mrs. Eleanor. She makes carrot cake just like our mum did." The simplicity of Luke's response deeply touched Mrs. Eleanor's heart and irritated Charles, who realized the children showed no interest in leaving their humble home to live with him. "Luke, sometimes we have to make choices thinking about the future," Charles said, trying to sound paternal. "With the money you have, you can study at the best schools, live in a big house." "I don't want a big house," Luke interrupted, moving closer to Gabriel. "I want to stay with my brother and Mrs. Eleanor." Gabriel hugged Luke protectively. At that moment, he was absolutely certain that this man was not to be trusted. There was something in his eyes that reminded him of the looks he had seen in people who frequented some of the local pubs, people who spoke of money with a greed that was transparent in every word. "Mr. Meadows," Gabriel said, with a firmness that surprised even Mrs. Eleanor. "Thank you for the visit, but we're fine here. If you really are our uncle, you can talk to Miss Patricia. She'll know how to sort everything out the right way." Charles realized he wouldn't be able to win the children's trust in this first meeting. He needed to change his strategy and act more sophisticatedly, but before leaving he decided to plant a seed of doubt. "Gabriel Luke," he said, putting the documents back in his briefcase, "I hope you understand that not everyone who shows up offering help has good intentions. This lawyer, for example, how much is she charging for her services?" "She's not charging anything," Gabriel replied immediately. "She said she wants to help because it's the right thing to do." Charles laughed sarcastically. "My boy, nobody works for free in this world. That woman must have some interest in your money. Be careful you don't find that out too. Late." After these words, Charles said goodbye and left through the gate, leaving behind an atmosphere charged with tension. Mrs. Eleanor waited until she was sure he had gone far enough away to speak to Gabriel. "My boy, I didn't like that man at all," she said, sitting on a plastic chair in the garden. "Something tells me he's not who he says he is." Gabriel sat next to her, still processing the conversation. "I felt that too, Mrs. Eleanor. My mum always told me that when someone talks a lot about money, it's because they have ulterior motives." Marina's wisdom was once again revealed through her son's words. Mrs. Eleanor smiled sadly, remembering the friend who had passed away, leaving behind two such special and intelligent boys. That same afternoon, Gabriel called Patricia Allen and reported the visit from the supposed uncle. The lawyer listened attentively to every detail and at the end asked a question that worried the boy. "Gabriel, you said this man knew about the exact value of the inheritance? He didn't say the amount, but he spoke as if he knew it was a lot of money." "That's strange," Patricia murmured thoughtfully. "Few people have access to that information. I'm going to investigate this Charles Meadows and also check if there was any information leak at the bank." The lawyer had developed a special affection for Gabriel and Luke since their first meeting. There was something in the boy's determination and the purity of his intentions that reminded her of the reasons she had chosen to specialize in family law. It was cases like this that gave meaning to her profession. On Friday morning, Patricia went to the bank for a meeting with Robert Miller. She had formally requested copies of all documents related to Gabriel's account and wanted to clarify some points about the procedures that would be necessary to release some of the money for the children's immediate needs. Robert received her in his office with an exaggerated cordiality that immediately caught the lawyer's attention. The director seemed nervous, sweating more than usual for a mild London morning, and his gestures were more abrupt than usual. "Ms. Allen, what a pleasure to have you here again," he said, indicating a chair in front of his desk. "I hope we can resolve everything quickly and efficiently." "I hope so too, Director Miller. I need to understand a few things about Gabriel's account," she said, opening her briefcase and taking out some notes. "From what I saw in the preliminary statement, regular monthly deposits were made for over 10 years. The mother's dedication is impressive." Robert nodded, but there was something in his expression that Patricia couldn't decipher. "Yes, Mrs. Rogers was very dedicated. She always came in person to make the deposits." "You knew her personally?" Patricia asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, I used to see her here at the bank. A simple, hard-working woman. Always talked about her sons," Robert replied, realizing he had provided unnecessary information. Patricia made some notes. It was strange that a regional director would personally know a client who made deposits of only £250 a month. Usually that type of transaction was handled by the tellers without reaching the management's attention. "Director, I need to request a full audit of the account. I want to be sure there have been no irregularities over the years." Robert's expression changed drastically. "An audit? Miss Allen, is that really necessary? Our institution has strict protocols." "That's exactly why there shouldn't be any problems," Patricia interrupted, maintaining a professional but firm tone. "When it comes to an inheritance of this magnitude left to minors, all procedures must be impeccable." Robert stood up and walked to the window, trying to buy time to organize his thoughts. The truth was that he had noticed Marina's account a few years ago when he began to see that her regular deposits could be used for some financial operations that would benefit the bank and, consequently, his own position in the institution. "Ma'am, I will arrange everything you are requesting," he finally said, "but this type of audit can take a few weeks." "No problem. In the meantime, I want an amount released for the children's basic needs, £5,000 for immediate expenses." Robert agreed, but his mind was already working on other possibilities. He needed to find a way to delay any deeper investigation of the account, at least until he could reverse some operations he had authorized, using Gabriel's money as collateral. That same afternoon, Charles Meadows called Robert from a public phone in the city centre. The conversation was brief but enough for the two men to align their strategies. "The lawyer is asking for an audit," Robert informed him, looking around nervously to make sure he was alone in his office. "We need to speed up our plans," Charles replied. "I'm filing for custody of the children today, claiming the elderly neighbour is unfit to care for them properly." "And what if the audit reveals the investments we made?" "There won't be time. Once I have legal guardianship of the children, I can authorize any transaction on the account. We'll sort out the rest later." Robert hung up the phone with his heart racing. He knew he was involved in a situation that could destroy his career and his life, but it was too late to turn back now. The money he had borrowed from Gabriel's account for personal investments needed to be replaced quickly, or he would face very serious consequences. Meanwhile, in Stratford, Mrs. Eleanor began to experience some symptoms that worried her. Chest pains that appeared especially when she was nervous or agitated, shortness of breath during household chores, and a weariness that seemed to persist even after a full night's sleep. She had hidden these symptoms from the children so as not to worry them, but she knew she needed to see a doctor. The problem was that, with the extra expenses she had incurred looking after Gabriel and Luke, she had postponed several routine appointments and checkups. Gabriel noticed something was different with Mrs. Eleanor when he saw her sit down abruptly while preparing dinner, clutching her chest with a pained expression. "Mrs. Eleanor, are you all right?" he asked, immediately dropping the notebook where he was doing his homework. "I'm fine, my boy. Just tired," she replied, trying to smile. But Gabriel could see the smile wasn't genuine. "You need to see a doctor," the boy insisted, with a concern that deeply touched the elderly woman's heart. "Gabriel, doctors are expensive, my boy, and I don't want you to worry about me." That night, Gabriel couldn't sleep, thinking about two things: the strange behavior of the man who claimed to be his uncle, and Mrs. Eleanor's health. He knew he had enough money to solve any medical problem she might have, but he also knew that the legal processes to access the inheritance were complicated. On Saturday morning, Gabriel made a decision. He called Patricia Allen and explained Mrs. Eleanor's health situation. The lawyer immediately understood the urgency of the situation and promised to expedite the release of a larger amount to cover the necessary medical costs. "Gabriel, I'll get an emergency court order," she said. "By Monday, we'll have at least £15,000 available to take care of Mrs. Eleanor." But what none of them knew was that Charles Meadows and Robert Miller had spent the weekend preparing a plan that could greatly complicate the whole situation. Charles had found an unscrupulous lawyer who specialized in custody cases, and together they had prepared a lawsuit to be filed on Monday morning. The document alleged that Eleanor Davis, aged 72, a sufferer of heart problems, was physically and financially unfit to adequately care for two children. It requested the immediate transfer of custody to Charles Meadows, a blood relative and the only known family member of the minors. As evidence, the lawsuit included photos of the simple house where the children lived, medical reports on Mrs. Eleanor's health obtained through questionable means, and statements from neighbors who had been manipulated or misinformed about the family's real situation. Robert, for his part, had prepared a series of documents that would hinder any immediate audit of Gabriel's account. He had transferred part of the funds to long-term investments that could not be redeemed immediately, and he had created a series of fictitious fees and charges that would justify any discrepancy found in the balance. On Sunday morning, Gabriel woke up with a bad feeling. Mrs. Eleanor had had a rough night, with more intense chest pains, and he had to help her several times during the early hours. Luke, frightened by the situation, had slept in his older brother's bed, seeking the comfort and protection that Gabriel had always represented for him. "Gabriel," Mrs. Eleanor said, her voice weaker than usual, "if anything happens to me, you need to call Miss Patricia immediately. Don't accept help from strangers. Don't sign any papers. Don't leave this house without her permission." "Don't talk like that, Mrs. Eleanor," Gabriel replied, holding her hand. "You're going to get better. We'll go to the doctor tomorrow, and with my mum's money, we'll take good care of you." But Mrs. Eleanor, with the wisdom of someone who had lived long and seen many difficult situations, knew that something was approaching. She could feel in the air that tension that precedes great storms, and her only concern was to ensure that Gabriel and Luke were protected when that storm arrived. In the afternoon, as Gabriel was helping Mrs. Eleanor take her heart medication, she said something that stuck in his memory. "My boy, your mother was a very wise woman. She knew life would test you, and that's why she left this protection. But remember, the money is just a tool. What will really protect you is the intelligence, courage, and love she planted in your hearts." Gabriel hugged Mrs. Eleanor tightly, feeling that she was trying to pass on a very important lesson. He didn't know exactly what challenges awaited him, but he felt that his life was about to change again, and that this time he would need to be even stronger and braver than he had been that morning at the bank. Sunday night passed slowly, with Gabriel waking up several times to check if Mrs. Eleanor was breathing normally. Luke slept deeply, oblivious to his brother's worries, but even in his dreams, he murmured his mother's name, as if his childish soul knew he would need her more than ever in the days to come. Monday dawned grey in London, with those heavy clouds that announce rain and seem to mirror the difficult moments of life. Gabriel woke up early, as he always did, to prepare breakfast for Luke, but found Mrs. Eleanor sitting in the kitchen, pale and short of breath. She had spent a sleepless night, with chest pains that intensified with each passing hour. "Mrs. Eleanor, you shouldn't have gotten up," Gabriel said, rushing to help her. "I'm calling Miss Patricia right now." "Calm down, my boy," she replied, trying to smile, but the pain was evident on her face. "It's still very early. Let's wait until at least 8 o'clock. Gabriel prepared chamomile tea, one of the recipes his mother had taught him for moments of nervousness and anxiety. As the water heated, he watched Mrs. Eleanor and felt a growing anguish in his chest. The woman who had become his second mother was clearly in need of urgent medical care. Luke woke up and immediately sensed that something was wrong. With the sensitivity typical of small children, he approached Mrs. Eleanor and, without a word, simply hugged her leg, offering the only comfort he knew how to give. At 8 o'clock sharp, Gabriel called Patricia. The lawyer answered on the first ring as if she had been expecting the call. "Gabriel, good morning. How is Mrs. Eleanor?" "Miss Allen, she's very unwell. She spent the night with chest pain and can't breathe properly. She needs to see a doctor urgently." "I'll be there to pick you all up in an hour. I've already secured the court order to release £15,000 for medical emergencies. We're going straight to St. Thomas's Hospital." Patricia hung up and immediately cancelled all her morning appointments. There was something about Gabriel that touched her deeply, a combination of premature maturity and childlike vulnerability that awakened a protective instinct in her she didn't even know she possessed. While they waited for Patricia to arrive, Gabriel helped Mrs. Eleanor get dressed and packed a small bag with the medications she was taking. Luke, even without fully understanding the gravity of the situation, helped in his own way, bringing the neighbor's shoes and packing some biscuits in a bag. It was at that exact moment that Charles Meadows arrived, accompanied by a woman who introduced herself as a social worker and 2 men in suits who were clearly court officers. The group arrived in 2 black cars, creating an intimidating atmosphere that immediately alarmed Gabriel. "Gabriel, Luke," Charles said, trying to sound paternal, "I've come to get you. I've obtained a court order to take care of you." Gabriel felt his blood run cold. "What order? We don't want to go with you." The woman, who called herself a social worker, approached with an artificial smile. "Hello, children. I'm Regina Moore, from Social Services. We received a report that you are living in inadequate conditions." "What inadequate conditions?" Gabriel asked with an indignation that surprised the adults. "We're fine here." One of the court officers showed a document. "Boy, it has been judicially determined that you are to be transferred to the custody of Mr. Charles Meadows, a blood relative. The elderly lady who was caring for you is not in a fit state of health for this responsibility." Gabriel looked at Mrs. Eleanor, who was sitting in the kitchen chair, clearly weakened, but with her eyes shining with indignation. Even ill, she would not let them take her children without a fight. "I don't accept this," Mrs. Eleanor said, her voice weak but determined. "These children have a lawyer. You can't take them without speaking." To Ms. Patricia Allen, Charles exchanged a meaningful look with Regina. "Mrs. Davis, the lawyer has no legal authority over the children. I am the closest relative, and the judge has determined that this is what's best for them." "Best for whom?" a firm voice asked from the doorway. Patricia had arrived and overheard part of the conversation. "Who are you, and what order is this?" The lawyer's presence immediately changed the dynamic of the situation. Regina tried to maintain her official posture, but it was clear she hadn't expected to find a professional prepared to question her procedures. "I'm Regina Moore, a social worker. We are carrying out a court order to transfer custody of these children," she said, handing a copy of the document to Patricia. Patricia quickly read the paper and immediately identified several irregularities. This document was issued as a preliminary injunction, without a hearing for the interested party, without a proper social evaluation, and without consideration for the best interests of the minors. It is legally questionable. Charles grew irritated with the lawyer's interference. "Ma'am, the judge has already decided. These children need a structured family, not a sick neighbor." "And since when are you a structured family?" Patricia retorted, scrutinizing Charles with a critical eye. "Gabriel, did you know this man before last week?" "No, Miss Allen, my mum never spoke of him," Gabriel replied, moving closer to Patricia as if she were a safe harbor. Patricia took out her phone and called the court office responsible for the decision. After a 5-minute conversation, she hung up with a victorious expression. "Gentlemen, I have just verified that this injunction was issued on an emergency basis, but the legal notice period has not been met. You are attempting to enforce a decision that is not yet officially valid. Furthermore, I am filing a motion to suspend this injunction right now." The court officers looked at each other, clearly embarrassed. It was evident they had been used in an irregular process, and they didn't want to get involved in a situation that could cause them professional trouble. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, "if there are legal questions about the validity of the decision, it's best we await official confirmation." Charles realized his plan was falling apart. He had counted on intimidation and the lack of legal knowledge of those involved, but he hadn't expected to encounter such a prepared and determined lawyer. "This is absurd," he shouted, completely losing his composure. "These children have a right to a better life. This sick woman can't take care of them, and this lawyer is only interested in the money." The accusation against Patricia was the last straw for Gabriel. "You don't know anything about us. Mrs. Eleanor has taken care of us with more love than you ever could. And Ms. Patricia is helping us for free because she's a good person." Luke, who had remained silent until that moment, approached Charles and said with the brutal honesty of small children, "I don't like you, you have mean eyes." Luke's innocent observation caused a general embarrassment. Regina realized the situation was becoming much more complicated than planned and decided to withdraw before her own professional reputation was compromised. "Mr. Meadows, I think it's best we await a new court decision. I will prepare a more detailed report on the children's living conditions," she said, already heading for the door. After the group left, Patricia turned to Mrs. Eleanor, who had remained seated throughout the discussion, clearly exhausted by the emotional strain. "Mrs. Eleanor, we're going to the hospital now. Gabriel, grab some basic documents and let's take care of your health first. We'll handle the rest later." On the way to the hospital, Patricia called a private investigator she had worked with on other cases. Marcus Silva was a former police officer who specialized in fraud investigations and had an impeccable reputation in the legal community. "Marcus, I need an urgent investigation. A man named Charles Meadows, claiming to be the uncle of 2 children, has appeared out of nowhere, interested in a considerable inheritance. I want to know everything about him." "Patricia, send me the details." "On WhatsApp, and I'll have a full report for you by tomorrow," Marcus replied. "If it smells like a scam, I'll find it." At the hospital, doctors confirmed that Mrs. Eleanor had a severe cardiac arrhythmia, likely caused by the emotional stress of the past few days. She would need surgery to implant a pacemaker, and the procedure would cost approximately £200,000 at a private hospital, as the NHS had a 6-month waiting list. "Miss Allen," Gabriel said, holding Mrs. Eleanor's hand as she lay on the gurney, "use the money from my inheritance for her surgery. My mum would have wanted that." Patricia felt her eyes well up with tears. The generosity and maturity of this 10-year-old boy were astounding. "Gabriel, I'll arrange everything. Mrs. Eleanor will have the best treatment possible." While Mrs. Eleanor was undergoing pre-operative tests, Patricia received a call from Marcus. "Patricia, you were right. This Charles Meadows is a complete fake." "What do you mean?" "First, he's not related to the children. His real name is Charles Meyer, and he has a history of attempted inheritance scams. Second, and this is more serious, he's a partner in a financial consulting firm with Robert Miller." "Robert Miller, the director of the bank?" "The very same. The company is called London Capital Investments Limited, and in recent months they've been moving suspicious amounts of money. Patricia, I think these people are using insider information from the bank to run scams." Marcus's revelation confirmed all of Patricia's suspicions. The situation was much more serious than she had imagined. It wasn't just an opportunistic relative trying to take advantage of orphaned children. It was an organized fraud scheme involving bank employees. "Marcus, I need documentary evidence, everything you can get on financial transactions, and especially on Gabriel's account. I suspect they may have tampered with the money." "Already on it. I have contacts in the banking sector who can help me. I'll send you a preliminary report by tomorrow evening." Patricia hung up the phone with a mixture of anger and determination. She had dealt with many cases of corruption and fraud throughout her career, but she had rarely encountered something as low as trying to steal the inheritance of orphaned children. Gabriel and Luke waited in the hospital corridor, eating a snack Patricia had bought from the cafeteria. The older boy watched the movements of the doctors and nurses, trying to read from their faces whether Mrs. Eleanor was in real danger. "Miss Allen?" Gabriel asked when Patricia approached them. "Is Mrs. Eleanor going to be okay?" "Yes, she will, Gabriel. The surgery is complicated, but the doctors are very good. In a few days she'll be back home taking care of you again," Patricia replied, sitting down next to the boys. "And that man, can he really take us away?" Patricia hugged Gabriel protectively. "Not while I'm looking after you. I found out he's not who he says he is, and I'm already taking legal action to protect you." Luke snuggled up on Patricia's other side, and at that moment she felt a responsibility that went far beyond her professional duty. These two brave and loving children had completely won her heart. The next morning, as Mrs. Eleanor prepared for surgery, Patricia received Marcus's report. The information was even more shocking than she had imagined. Robert Miller had used money from Gabriel's account to make risky investments in the name of the company he co-owned with Charles Meyer. More than £350,000 had been embezzled over the past 2 years. Patricia immediately contacted the Public Prosecutor's Office and Scotland Yard. The case involved crimes against the national financial system, fraud against a minor, conspiracy, and embezzlement. The penalties could be up to 20 years in prison for each person involved. The police investigation was swift and efficient. With the evidence provided by Marcus and technical support from the central bank, within less than 48 hours, Scotland Yard had mapped out the entire criminal scheme. Robert and Charles were not the only ones involved. There was a network of people who specialized in identifying the inheritances of vulnerable individuals to carry out sophisticated scams. On Thursday morning, as Gabriel and Luke had breakfast in the hospital next to the bed where Mrs. Eleanor was recovering from the successful surgery, they saw on the room's television the news that would definitively change their lives. Scotland Yard's Operation Lost Legacy dismantles gangs specializing in bank fraud, the reporter announced. Among those arrested are Robert Miller, a director at the Central Bank of England's Oxford Street branch, and Charles Meyer, who posed as a relative of orphaned children to gain access to £1 million inheritances. Gabriel watched the report with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Everything Patricia had said was being confirmed, and he now realized how naive he had been to almost believe the man who claimed to be his uncle. "Gabriel," Mrs. Eleanor said, still weak, but with her eyes shining with satisfaction, "your mother is watching over you from above. She knew you would face bad people, and that's why she left not only the money, but also put good people in your path. Mrs. Eleanor's surgery was a complete success. The pacemaker was working perfectly, and the doctors assured them she would have many healthy years ahead of her. The cost of the operation was paid with the money from Gabriel's inheritance, just as the boy had wished. But the best news came on Friday. Patricia arrived at the hospital with a briefcase full of documents and a smile that lit up the entire corridor. "Gabriel, Luke, I have a surprise for you," she said, approaching the bed where the three were gathered. "What surprise, Ms. Allen?" Luke asked, his eyes full of curiosity. "The court has ordered that all the money that was embezzled from your account be returned with interest and adjustments for inflation. In addition, the bank will pay compensation for moral damages." "Does that mean—" "It means that instead of £800,000, you now have £1,170,000, Patricia said, barely able to contain her own emotion. Gabriel was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. Then he looked at Mrs. Eleanor and said, "Now we can renovate our house, buy all the medicine you need, and there will still be enough for Luke and me to study all the way through university. And there's one more thing," Patricia said, taking an envelope from her briefcase. "The judge has approved my request to be your legal guardian. If you agree, of course." Gabriel looked at Luke, then at Mrs. Eleanor, and finally at Patricia. "Ms. Allen, do you really want to take care of us?" "More than anything, Gabriel. You've brought a special meaning to my life." Luke jumped from his chair and hugged Patricia tightly. "Now I have a new mum, and Mrs. Eleanor is still our grandma." Mrs. Eleanor smiled through her tears. "Marina, my friend, your children have found not only protection but a family that will love them as you loved them." In that hospital room, surrounded by the affection of people who had become family, Gabriel felt that his mother was truly looking after them from a special place. The inheritance she had left was not just money. It was proof that true love always finds a way to protect those we love, even when we are no longer here to care for them personally. Friday afternoon brought yet another surprise. Julianne Sanders, the bank employee who had defended Gabriel that first morning, appeared at the hospital with flowers and unexpected news. "Gabriel, I wanted to give you some news in person," she said with a genuine smile. "I've been promoted to branch manager. The first thing I did was create a special protocol for serving minors. No child will ever go through what you went through again." Gabriel hugged Julianne warmly. "Thank you for defending me that day. You were the first person to treat me with respect. Gabriel, you taught me that courage has no age. A 10-year-old boy gave me a lesson in dignity that I will never forget." When everyone said their goodbyes and left the hospital, Gabriel walked with Patricia and Luke along Oxford Street, the same street where it had all begun just a few days before. The intense bustle of the city was the same, but for Gabriel the world had been completely transformed. In his right hand, he held the yellowed paper from his mother, now carefully kept in a new folder Patricia had given him. In his left hand he held Luke's hand, and in his heart he held the certainty that even in the most difficult times, there are always people willing to fight for what is right. "Ms. Patricia," Gabriel said, as they waited for the light to change to cross the street, "when I grow up, I want to be a lawyer just like you." "Why, Gabriel?" "To defend other children like me and Luke, so they too can have someone who fights for them." Patricia smiled, knowing that the brave boy she had met in that bank would undoubtedly become an extraordinary man. Marina's inheritance had protected her sons, but the true wealth she had left was the courage, generosity, and capacity for love that shone in Gabriel's and Luke's eyes. 6 months had passed since the events that forever changed the lives of Gabriel and Luke. Autumn was arriving in London with its cool mornings and still warm afternoons, and the city continued its fast pace, indifferent to the small revolutions that occur in the lives of ordinary people. The family's new home was located in a quiet neighborhood in Greenwich, East London. It was a single-story house with 3 bedrooms, a spacious garden where Luke could play, and a special corner that Gabriel had reserved for the medicinal herbs that Mrs. Eleanor cultivated. The elderly neighbor now had her own room, lovingly decorated by Patricia, who had proven to be not only a dedicated guardian, but a true mother to the boys. Gabriel had grown a lot in these months, not just physically but emotionally. At 11, he showed an impressive maturity, but without losing the sweetness and spontaneity typical of childhood. Luke, in turn, had blossomed in an environment of security and love, becoming a more talkative, curious, and happy child. On that Saturday morning, Patricia was organizing some documents in the makeshift office she had set up in the living room of the new house. Gabriel was helping her, sorting papers chronologically, a task he loved because it made him feel useful and important in family matters. "Ms. Patricia," Gabriel said, using the formal address he maintained even in the intimacy of their home, "I found a folder I didn't know we had." Patricia looked up from her documents and saw Gabriel holding a yellowed manila folder, similar to the paper he had taken to the bank that first day. It was a folder that had been forgotten at the bottom of Marina's shoebox, mixed in with other papers they had kept as mementos. "What's inside, Gabriel?" The boy carefully opened the folder and found some documents he already knew. Birth certificates, Marina's work records, some old photos. But at the bottom of the folder, something caught his attention. A sealed white envelope with familiar handwriting on the outside. "To Gabriel and Luke, with all my love, Marina." Gabriel felt his heart race. His hands trembled slightly as he held the envelope, as if it contained something sacred. Patricia noticed the boy's emotion and moved closer to him. "Gabriel, do you want me to open it with you?" The boy nodded, unable to speak. Luke, who was playing in the garden, sensed that something important was happening and ran inside. "What's that?" Luke asked with a child's natural curiosity. "It's a letter from our mum," Gabriel replied, his voice choked with emotion. Patricia helped Gabriel carefully open the envelope. Inside, there were 3 handwritten sheets of paper, in Marina's neat script. The pages were numbered, as if she had carefully planned every word she would write. Gabriel began to read aloud, but after a few words his voice failed. Patricia gently took the pages and continued reading in a soft and caring voice. "My dearest sons, my most precious treasures, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer there to personally take care of you. My heart is broken just imagining this moment, but at the same time it is at peace because I know I have left everything prepared for you to have the life I always dreamed for you. Gabriel, my brave son, you were always more mature than your age. From a young age you looked after Luke like a protective big brother, and you looked after me when I came home tired from work. I want you to know that every time you asked me why I worked so much, why we didn't have the things other families had, my heart ached, because I wanted to give you the whole world. Luke, my little artist, you were always my joy on difficult days. Your drawings taped to the kitchen wall, your little questions about everything, your tight hugs when I came home. You reminded me every day that life is beautiful, even when it seems complicated. I want you to understand something very important. Every penny I saved for you came at a sacrifice, but it was a sacrifice made with joy. Every time I didn't buy new clothes for myself, it was because I preferred to invest in your future. Every time I turned down an invitation to go out, it was because those extra hours of work meant more money for your account. You must be wondering why I never told you about this money. The answer is simple. I didn't want you to feel different from other children. I didn't want you to stop dreaming, thinking you already had everything sorted. I wanted you to grow up knowing the value of things, knowing that everything in life has a price, and that the most important thing is not the money we have, but the character we build. Patricia paused, noticing that Gabriel and Luke were crying silently. She herself felt her eyes misting over, touched by the wisdom and unconditional love that shone through every word of Marina's. Gabriel, Patricia continued reading, you will be responsible for looking after this money until you are both of age. I know it's a big responsibility for a child, but I trust you completely. Use this money first to protect yourselves, to have health, education, and dignity. Then use it to achieve your dreams, but always remember to help other people too. I know you will find good people on your path. Trust your hearts to identify who truly wishes you well, and when you find these people, don't be ashamed to accept help. No one can live alone in this world. Luke, my love, always obey your brother Gabriel. He will take care of you with the same love I would. And Gabriel, be patient with Luke. He is small and will need time to understand many things. You two always take care of each other. The love between you is the greatest inheritance I can leave. Money can run out, a house can fall, but the love between brothers lasts forever. There is something I need to tell you about your father. I know you always wanted to know about him, and I always made excuses not to talk. The truth is, he was a good man, but one who couldn't handle the responsibility of having children. When Gabriel was born, he got scared and left. When Luke was born, he never even knew. Don't hold a grudge against him, because grudges only hurt the one who holds them. But know that you never needed him to be special. You were always complete, just the two of you and me. Now I want to talk about something very serious with you. Take good care of Mrs. Eleanor. She is a woman of gold who has always helped our family without expecting anything in return. If something happens to me, I am sure she will look after you as if you were her own grandchildren. Always return that affection. Gabriel, I am sure you will be a wonderful man. You have a good heart, a brilliant mind, and a courage that impresses me every day. Use these qualities to build a beautiful life and to help other people too. Luke, you have a special gift for seeing the beauty in simple things. Never lose that ability, because it will make you a happy person your whole life. And keep drawing, because your drawings light up any room. My sons, I will always be with you, even if you can't see me. I will be in the wind that rustles the curtains, in the rain that waters the plants, in the sun that comes through the window in the morning. I will be in every moment of your joy, in every achievement, in every dream come true. When you miss me, look up at the sky and remember that a mother's love never dies. It stays tucked away in her children's hearts forever. Don't forget to pray every night, giving thanks for the good things that happened during the day. And in difficult times, remember that after the storm, the sun always comes out. I love you more than anything in this world. You were the reason for my life, my joy, my strength to face any difficulty. Always take care of yourselves. Be happy. Be good people. With all my eternal love, Mum. Marina P.S. Gabriel. Under your bed, hidden behind the headboard, there is a small box with some jewelry from the grandmother you never met. They are simple, but they were our family's treasure. When you get married, give them to your wife. And when Luke gets married, you will share them. What's important is not the value of the jewelry, but the story of love they represent. The silence that followed the end of the letter was deep and sacred. Gabriel hugged Luke tightly, and the two cried together. But they were not tears of sadness, they were tears of gratitude, of love, of a sweet longing that warms the heart instead of breaking it. Patricia carefully put away the pages of the letter, knowing that those words would be reread many times throughout the boys' lives. Then she hugged them both, forming a circle of affection that symbolized the new family that had been born from a tragedy. Gabriel, Luke, she said, her voice choked with emotion, your mother was truly a very wise woman. Every word of this letter shows how much she loved you. Gabriel wiped his tears and looked at Patricia with renewed determination. Ms. Patricia, I want to honor everything my mother wrote. I want to be the man she dreamed I would be. And you already are, Gabriel. Your courage, your generosity, your way of caring for Luke. All of this shows that you inherited the best of your mother. Luke, still sniffling a little, approached Gabriel. Bro, I'll always obey you, just like Mum said. Gabriel smiled through his tears. Luke, we'll always take care of each other, and we'll take care of Mrs. Eleanor, Miss Patricia, and all the people who are important to us. That afternoon they decided to do something special. Gabriel suggested they visit Marina's grave, something they hadn't done since moving into the new house. Patricia thought it was a lovely idea, and Mrs. Eleanor, despite her age and heart condition, insisted on accompanying them. Highgate Cemetery in North London was a grand and historic place. Marina's grave was in a wooded area where the sound of birds created an atmosphere of peace. Gabriel had insisted on a white marble headstone with a simple inscription, Marina Smith Rogers, devoted mother, courageous woman, her love lives forever in our hearts. Gabriel knelt before the grave and began to speak as if Marina could hear him perfectly. Mum, we read your letter today. Thank you for thinking of everything, for taking care of us even before you had to. You were the most amazing mum in the world. Luke knelt beside his brother. Mummy, I'm drawing a lot, just like you said in the letter, and I'm obeying Gabriel properly. Patricia and Mrs. Eleanor stood a little way off, respecting the boys' private moment with their mother. But both had tears in their eyes, touched by the purity of a love that not even death could interrupt. Marina, Mrs. Eleanor said, approaching the grave, I promised you I would look after your boys, and I am keeping my promise. They are growing up to be handsome, intelligent, and with hearts as good as yours. Patricia also drew near. Marina, I didn't have the privilege of knowing you personally, but through your sons I can see what an extraordinary woman you were. I promise I will love and protect Gabriel and Luke as if they were my own children. As they were leaving the cemetery, Gabriel asked to stop at a flower shop. With the money left over from his allowance, he bought a small pot of white violets, his mother's favorite flowers. I'm going to plant them in our garden, he explained to Patricia. That way, whenever the violets bloom, I'll remember that my mother's love is also blooming in our lives. Life went on, but now with a lightness and joy that hadn't existed before. Gabriel dedicated himself to his studies with impressive determination, always getting the best grades in his class. Luke developed his artistic talent more and more, creating drawings that Patricia made a point of framing and hanging around the house. Mrs. Eleanor, fully recovered from her heart surgery, had become the grandmother the boys never had. She taught traditional recipes to Gabriel, told old stories to Luke, and offered her life's wisdom whenever Patricia needed advice on raising the children. Julianne Sanders kept in regular contact with the family, visiting them once a month. She had recently married and always said she wanted her future children to be as brave as Gabriel and as creative as Luke. A year after the discovery of the letter, Gabriel made a decision that surprised the entire family. He wanted to use part of the inheritance to create a foundation to help other orphaned children. The idea was to offer legal, psychological, and financial support to minors who found themselves in situations similar to the one he and Luke had experienced. Gabriel, Patricia said, when the boy presented his project, are you sure this would mean donating a considerable amount? I'm sure, Miss Patricia. My mother always said that money only has value when it's used to do good, and I want other children to have the chance that we had. The Marina Smith Foundation was officially established on the 2nd anniversary of the discovery of the inheritance. Gabriel insisted on a simple ceremony held at the same bank where it all began. The current director, who had replaced Robert Miller, gladly provided the space, proud to host such a significant event. During the ceremony, Gabriel gave a speech that moved everyone present. My mother always taught me that the most important thing in life is not what we receive, but what we are able to give to others. She saved every penny, thinking of my future and my brother's future. Now, I want to use this money to ensure that other children also have a future. The Marina Smith Foundation will help children who have lost their parents, who are alone, who need legal protection. We will show them that there is always hope. There is always someone willing to fight for them. My mother is no longer here physically, but her love continues to change lives, and it will continue to change them forever. At the end of the speech, a light rain began to fall over London. Gabriel looked at the sky and smiled, remembering the words from his mother's letter. I will be in the rain that waters the plants. Luke approached his brother and whispered, Bro, I think Mum is crying with joy. Gabriel hugged his brother, and at that moment, surrounded by all the people he loved, he felt he had fulfilled the promise he had made at his mother's grave. He had become the man she had dreamed he would be, brave, generous, and capable of turning pain into love, tragedy into hope. The afternoon was fading over London, with that golden light typical of the end of the day in the country's largest city. Gabriel and Luke walked hand in hand with Patricia and Mrs. Eleanor along the same Oxford Street where it had all begun. The intense bustle of the city was the same. People rushed to their appointments, cars honked in traffic, vendors offered their goods. But for Gabriel, all that commotion now had a different meaning. Each person who passed them carried their own story, their own dreams and difficulties. Ms. Patricia, Gabriel said, observing the movement around them. One day I want to help a lot of people. I want my life to make a difference in the lives of others. Patricia smiled, knowing that this extraordinary boy would indeed make a difference in the world. Gabriel, you are already making a difference. The courage you showed in that bank inspired many people. The generosity you show every day inspires our entire family. Luke, swinging a small backpack where he kept his latest drawings, looked at his brother with admiration. Bro, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Luke, you don't need to be like me. You need to be like yourself, but the best version possible. That's what our mum wanted for both of us. When they got home, Gabriel went to his room and took out from a drawer the yellowed paper. That had changed their lives. He had kept it carefully, like a sacred treasure that represented much more than numbers in a bank account. Looking at that paper, Gabriel remembered everything he had been through, the fear he felt entering the bank, the humiliation inflicted by Robert Miller, the protection offered by Patricia, the conspiracy of Charles Meyer, Mrs. Eleanor's illness, and finally, the discovery of his mother's letter. Every moment of that journey had been crucial in shaping him into the person he was now. Adversity had revealed his courage, the generosity of others had taught him the importance of solidarity, and his mother's love, even after her passing, had guided his every decision. Gabriel put the yellowed paper away again, now next to his mother's letter. Two documents that represented the past and the future, the material inheritance and the emotional inheritance, the starting point and the final destination of a love story that transcended life itself. That night, before going to sleep, Gabriel and Luke knelt beside the bed, as they did every night, and said their prayer of gratitude. Thank you, God, for our mother being so wise. Thank you for Miss Patricia, for Mrs. Eleanor, for Julianne, and for all the good people you put in our path. Thank you for allowing us to help other children, and thank you for our family being together and happy. When they turned off the bedroom light, a gentle breeze rustled the curtains, and Gabriel smiled, remembering the words from the letter, "I will be in the wind that rustles the curtains." Marina Smith Rogers' love was truly present there, eternally protecting her two most precious treasures and inspiring them to spread that love to the entire world. The last thing Gabriel thought before falling asleep was a silent promise he made to his mother. "Mum, I will honor your love forever. Every day of my life will be a way of saying thank you for everything you did for us." And so, in that cozy house in the neighborhood of Greenwich, surrounded by the love of his new family, Gabriel Smith Rogers slept peacefully, knowing he had transformed an inheritance of money into an inheritance of love, hope, and generosity that would last forever. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Gabriel, Luke, and Marina has deeply touched your hearts. If you were moved by this journey of love, courage, and overcoming adversity, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment stood out to you the most. Every day we bring intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest and truest side of the human soul, showing that genuine love has the power to transform any adversity into an opportunity for growth. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, ready to share another story that will move and inspire your life.